Welcome back to the Contacts Coaching Podcast. We are joined this beautiful Saturday morning by the Drew Hibbs, two-time state champion basketball coach in the state of California, current basketball coach at Woodcreek High School in Roseville. Coach, thanks for taking the time. I'm glad I finally pinned you down.
Thank you. Good to be here.
All right, Coach. Well, why don't you do me a favor and take us through your background as a coach? How did you get into this? What was the process for you landing your first job? And then over the course of time, how you ended up at Woodcreek?
Wow. Well, I tell you what, my parents were both in education. So I think that I was always headed down that path. I was always going to get into education somehow. I hit my degrees in history. I love history. Want to be a history teacher. A lot of history teachers become coaches, right? Or vice versa. Our coaches are history teachers. And then I played at South Lake Tahoe High School, and I played for Tom Orlich, and really got into the coaching aspect through him. And when my playing days were over after 2 years of college, JC, I played 1 year at Menlo for Bob Williams. And then I moved to Sacramento and played for Hub Morphew at AR for 1 year. I had my friends like Brian Katz, you mentioned him in our little pre-talk, said, "Oh, go play as long as you can, play as long as you can." I might have been able to play beyond that, but I was done. I had the coaching bug, wanted to get into it. I had some connections here in Sacramento, and there was a JV opening at El Camino, and John Christopoulos was there, longtime coach at El Camino. He passed away last year. And I had known John Karsten through basketball. And John Karsten is a legend here in Sacramento area. And he made a call for me. He knew Christopoulos and Jim Domino at El Camino, and said, give this kid a chance, you know? And so at 20 years old, I was a JV coach at El Camino, just a couple of years older than the kids. And that's really how it started. I was at El Camino for 4 years, 2 years as the JV head coach, and then 2 years as Christopoulos' assistant on varsity. And during that time, I think it was 89, won the section championship, beat Davis in the finals, and went on to NorCal's. Then after that, I worked with Bob Hamilton, longtime UC Davis coach, but he was at Yuba College at the time. And that was a fantastic experience working with him. Learned a lot, but I was subbing in the San Juan district, and driving up to Yuba in a beat up old car. I couldn't handle that. So actually for Yuba, I was recruiting a Foothill kid, and then the job came open. And that particular year, there was like 10 high schools in Sacramento that were open. And I really wanted Sac High. I wanted to represent Sacramento, and what better representation than Sac High? And they must have hated me because I was calling them like every day. And so I made this list of jobs that I thought, hey, these would be the best jobs. And Foothill was like at the bottom of the list. Mm-hmm. Of course, I get in there. John Karsten had been the very first coach at Foothill High School back in the 60s. Mm-hmm. And so he still knew people there, makes a call for me again. Hey, give this kid a chance, whatever. I was 24 years old. And that's the job I got. The job that I really didn't want was the one that I got. Mm-hmm. And it was fabulous. It turned out unbelievably. So I was there for only 3 years there. I was teaching there. They hired me full time as a history teacher, and they said, "Oh, by the way, can you teach PE? We've got some PE classes available." I'm like, "No, I'm not a PE teacher at all." Mm-hmm. So they said, "Well, how can you get a supplement?" So I stood in line. Like I got there at 6 o'clock in the morning. They were giving the NTE at Davis. I got there early. There was one test left, and I got it, and I passed it just barely. And I found out when I got back from my honeymoon, I got married that summer, found out that they had hired me for 2 periods of history and 3 periods of PE. And so it was just, it fell into place.
Whatever combo is needed, coach.
Whatever. That's right. So after that first year, there was an old teacher that retired, a PE teacher that retired. I was pink slipped because we had too many, right? So I was pink slipped, and
hold on really quickly. Hold on.
Yeah.
For those of you that are unaware what that means, when you are getting into teaching in the public school world, generally speaking, your first 2 or 3 years, until you get up the hierarchy, you are receiving a pink slip at the end of the year, which says you may not have a job next year.
Right.
90% of the time you get your job back, but it's still not fun.
Right. No, it was tough to go through that. But there was a teacher there who was going to retire. Everybody knew he was going to retire, but he didn't put his paperwork in until right before school started. So all the surplus teachers had been placed, so they had to hire outside. So he saved my job. So they hired me, and and then the rest, I was there. I taught there for 27 years.
Wow.
So, I was a basketball coach for 19 of those. But after the third year, we in '94 won a state championship, and then I got the job at Sierra College. So again, kind of fell into that position through people I knew, and it was a part-time position. Again, I was still teaching at Foothill, but going up to Sierra every day. Great experience. I was there for 4 years. My assistant coach at Foothill took over the Foothill job, Mike Wall, of course, right? Who's now had great success at Folsom. And then after 4 years at Sierra, I didn't get the full-time job after working my butt off trying to get my master's and all that and get it in, right? Which I got. They went outside and hired somebody else for the full-time position. So for 2 years, I just kind of hung around Foothill and, taught and was looking for positions, looking for some JC jobs, really. Then Mike Wall calls me up and says, "Hey, I'm going to take the job at Folsom." He says, you figured you might want to, come back at Foothill and coach again. So I went to the principal and said, "Hey, I was helping as AD then. I said, "Hey, I'm going to go ahead and step back into the basketball job." And she said, "Well, you're going to have to go through the process, the interview." I said, "No, I'm not doing that." Said another word. So there was no interview. I guess I interviewed myself and I guess, I don't know.
Well, if you're the AD at the time, you did the process. I found the right guy.
Process. So went back there and was there for another, it was a total of 19. So 16 years?
16.
What was that? From 2000, to what, 2007 to 16, 17. And then I wasn't gonna, I'd stepped down from coaching. My assistant, Stephen Colton, had taken over at Foothill, kind of grooming him to take that over, and played for me. I was on our 2003 state championship team. And I was just, gonna sit out, and I thought I was done. My wife said, "We live in Roseville. Go apply for this Woodcreek job. You know those guys over there." And Paul Hayes had been coach. Burnell Pinkerton are both friends of mine. He said, "Come on, Drew, apply for the job." I'm like, I don't know. So I thought, what the heck? Got the job, and I love it here. Saved, really, I almost think it kind of saved my life in a way. Foothill was not a good place. I did not enjoy going to school there and going to work every day anymore. It had changed quite a bit. I kind of hate to say this, but I didn't like the kids. I didn't like going into work every day. It was I could have done it for a few more years, but it just wasn't a good place. And so I get here, and it really has changed me.
Nice.
It has brought me kind of back to life, back to teaching, back to coaching. So I've enjoyed every year. It's my 5th year now at Woodcreek, and I love it. I'm going to finish my career here. Probably about 6 or 7 more years.
Don't put a timeline on it, Coach. It will come when it comes. But
I got 2 young kids, 10-year-old twin boys, and I don't know if either one of them are gonna. One may be interested in basketball. I'd like to maybe see them through if they want to play. But if they don't, then that's okay too. That's okay too.
Good.
Give them I may graduate to retirement when they graduate. I don't know.
There you
I've
go.
got tons of years in, so it's just my age,
Yeah.
Get to 61 and a half, 62, whatever it is, then I'll check it out.
There you go. There you go. Well, I appreciate the backstory, and I wanted to talk about a few things here. Number one, and this is really kind of off topic in regards to where I usually go, but I think it's important given your background and all the names you mentioned and the connectivity specifically of the Sacramento area coaching. I forgot you were at El Camino and we have a bunch of these connections, but how important would you say, both in your former AD role and as a coach, the network building and the willingness to get out there and connect with other coaches and other people in, let's call it, the business? How important is that to growing as a young coach, creating opportunities for yourself? And what would you say are kind of the best techniques for doing that? Because anyone that knows Sacramento basketball, you have like the Hall of Fame pedigree here just with the connections you made, some of which you actually coached with for, and some you just taught with or came into contact with through degrees of separation. Can you talk a little bit about how important that is, both on your journey and others coming up trying to do what you're doing?
Well, I mentioned John Karsten. I really owe my career to him. I mean, without him, I don't get a foot in the door, at least not at that time, not at age 20, that's for sure. And and he's still he comes to games still for us here now at Woodcreek. But I've got great assistant coaches. I've got JV coaches that have been varsity coaches for years. I got Tim Interbitson and Tim Ridge.
Jesus.
I've got my freshman coach who's been with me for years. He was with me at Foothill. I've got my former assistant Mike Michaud, who was with me at Foothill for years. So it's kind of, we don't have turnover in our coaching ranks. I mean, I'm not looking for guys every year. You know what I mean? Some programs have to. There's a revolving door. The connections have been crucial for me because of my history background. I think when I got to Foothill, I wanted the history. It had a long history since it opened. Karsten had success. John Hoagland was a great coach at Foothill, and they won back then. It was the TOC in the 70s. So I wanted to get that history in the program. Brought them in. I named the tournament, after John Karsten. We started a Hall of Fame, a Foothill Hall of Fame, and got the coaches in and former players in, and so I really wanted that connection. I did something. This kind of is off your question, but I did something early on where I just the goal was state championship, and I said to my very first team, I said, we're going to win state championships here. Pretty ballsy for a 24-year-old, right? And I told them, I said, and you guys are not going to physically be a part of that. It's going to happen down the road. It's not going to happen right away. I said, but what I want you to know is that you are going to be the foundation and the growth, and you are going to be the base of that. I talk about foundation a lot. Sometimes it's not even the foundation. Sometimes you got to purchase the land. You got to clear it first. We were at that stage, right? Get the dozers in, get some trees out of there and some shrubs, and flatten it out so you can start to build. Foothill had been down for a while since those glory days of the early 70s and into the mid 70s. And so for whatever reason, those kids were huge in the success. They bought in. So when they bought in, other classes behind them bought in, and but part of that is name dropping. Steve Williams is he was a longtime coach at Grant High School. Runs a Sly Park basketball camp up, great camp up in the foothills. Those connections are crucial. They have been for me. I would say they led to other connections. I think I get along with most coaches,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm the league rep, so I have to organize some stuff there.
Mm-hmm.
I think relationships are crucial, and then that kind of trickles down to then your relationships with the players and the connections you make. We had a game last night, played a league game last night against Yuba City, and I must have had 10 former players here last night, not only from Woodcreek,
Mm-hmm.
from Foothill.
Mm-hmm.
There's really a huge connection. I can't tell you the connection from Foothill to Woodcreek.
Mm-hmm.
Students now that their parents were my students at Foothill. There's a big connection.
Yeah.
Tons of them.
Yep.
I have players that are my players' kids.
Yep.
I have a Kirby, freshman.
Yep.
Kirby's on varsity, and of course I had the Kirbys at Foothill were part of the state championship teams.
Yeah.
So the connections have made it fun, have made it worthwhile, and of course as a teacher, and a coach, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think it's, as you come into it as a 24-year-old, right? That's when I got my first job at El Camino. And thankfully I had a lot of these similar names in my path fortuitously. But that mentorship, and not just like, hey, here's how you do things, but hey, let me introduce you to somebody else that might be able to help, is super important. And so it's like you can knuckle down and try to be in this vacuum of learning, and at the same time you got to branch out and go pick the brains and just spend time with people that have done what you're trying to do. And I think oftentimes, and the whole point of this podcast was, not everybody has the network that you just listed off or that I do. So how do you create a digital database of mentorship? And so the people that have been on are a lot of the people you mentioned, but purposely for that reason. So I always say, you listen to this, you enjoy or you appreciate something somebody said, like reach out. Most of the time, someone reaches out to us and asks for help, we're going to say, yeah, sure, no problem.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So on that, I'm going to totally pivot here, and I want to go back to Sierra College. And what you said was, after 3 years of busting my ass, getting a master's, building a program, I didn't get the full-time job. Mm-hmm. What was that like for you? How did you deal with that adversity? And Brandon Laird said a long time ago, ironically, he was like one of the first people on the episode, and he said, closed doors are a blessing. And then we know what happened later at SAC, and now how that shook out, and now where he's at.
Right.
You talk to him now, and it was like the frustration of that time, but then it's that same thing coming back. Like, yeah, you know what? That was actually a good thing because I'm in a great situation. Talk a little bit about how you navigated that. We'll call it adversity. I would guess some disappointment, some other things, and how that then played into the rest of your journey and how you've used that moving forward.
Well, my goal was, to move up and move on. It was, hey, I'm going to be a high school coach. Then I'm going to JC. Then I'm going to go to Division II or whatever. And then I'm going to be almost like the Bob Thomason type, he was at Turlock High School, then Columbia College, then Stanislaus, then UOP, I kind of thought that that's where my career was going to go. By golly, I'm going to move up and I'm going to be a Division I coach. And that's what I want. And I was on that track. I have in my past, and I suppose still have a tendency to ruffle some feathers. Let's put it that way. I had some issues getting along with some people at Sierra. I was again hired as what they called it then, adjunct faculty. So I taught a couple side. The coaching part is actually classes. And then they gave me a weekend, weight room class. And so I was picking up some classes, but I wasn't full time. Said, you got to get your master's, So, I went through St. Mary's, the program down there, 3 summers and classes during the week. And I'd drive down we'd have an early practice at Sierra. And I had a Wednesday night for one whole year of 2 semesters, a Wednesday night class from 7 to 10.
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting back home at 1 a.m., going to school the next day and teaching at Foothill, then going to Sierra. And it was tough. Mm-hmm. To have the people that I thought I had in my corner at Sierra, and then to not get the job after being there 4 years and being successful was super disappointing. Super disappointing. And I was very bitter. I don't hold that in very well either. And so it was devastating. Again, like you mentioned, you need doors to close to learn and grow. And so I learned a lot through that. Again, I was doing nothing. Mike Wall leaves Foothill. I decided to come back. 3 years later, we're state champions again. It was a great group that was coming in there, and a hungry group. I was hungry because I felt I got something to prove. Those guys, people at Sierra, I'm going to show them. So there was a lot of, there any coach that, because we all have egos that say, hey, it's strictly about the kids, is lying. There's a lot, it was about me too. I had something to prove. And fortunately, those kids had a chip on their shoulder too, and had something to prove, and it was a perfect mesh. But then again, so you get back there, and we had kind of maintained the program. Mike did a great job when he was there. They were section champions one of the years that he was there, and had NorCal, had qualified for NorCal's a couple times during his time there. And so it was just a continuation of what we had started to originally build back when I first got the job in 91. And, and then, now I'm there kind of realizing, okay, probably that goal of Division I, probably not going to attain that. But then, I go through the passing of my first wife, who had breast cancer and died in 2003, ironically, the year second state championship. So teaching at Foothill, I meet a woman, and we start a relationship. And if I wasn't there, that wouldn't happen. I have my twin boys. Again, if you look at all the dominoes that tend to fall or go that way, it's like, well, that wouldn't have happened, or at least it wouldn't have happened that way. Right. Been somewhere else. So you appreciate those things and say, it was disappointing at the time, but in the long run, I wouldn't change anything. I'm happy where I'm at, happy being here. I have a great bunch of colleagues here that I work with every day and look forward to coming to school. Have fun, and we have great kids at our school, and so I wouldn't change anything. Yeah, a lot of heartbreak in some ways, depression, but it all has worked out, and I'm happy where I'm at.
Yep. No, and I agree with you. It's hard, obviously, right? Because especially when you're in the seat, and it's not like you're fired, but it's like, okay, because of the rules of whatever state of California, whoever runs all that stuff, it's like, this is the process. And ultimately, similar to what happened to Brandon, right? It's like, hey, we got to open this thing up, and hey, we think we have a better person, and we're going to go this route. But what I've taken away from that over the years, just observing, is one of my kind of cliches, is sometimes our best decisions are made by other people. And, we're not in a position necessarily to make them. So somebody makes them for us, and it ends up working out. And it wouldn't have had we made the choice we wanted to make. So I love the reflection.
That's a good point. And like I said, I very bitter, but I felt like it really was motivating too.
Yeah.
And that next group, when I came back to Foothill, to really, I pushed them really hard.
Yeah.
And put a lot of expectations.
Yep.
When we lost in the NorCal semis to Reardon, 2002, I had almost all juniors.
Yep.
And they had 2 Division I's. We lost in overtime at home, and it was gut wrenching. And I made a statement, and I got ripped for it, but I made a statement in the paper. They were talking the next year, and I said, if we don't win a state championship this season will be a complete disappointment. I mean, what a huge and I wasn't thinking about it.
No,
that was it. But those guys again bought into it and said, no, we're Chris Walker, Sam Kirby, those guys, they completely, and many others.
Yep.
They bought in, and that was the goal. And there was nothing else, and that was going to be accepted.
Yeah.
And that was a phenomenal year.
Absolutely. It was fun to watch too. Let me ask this. Because, okay, so Foothill High School head coach for the first time. That's a long time ago. You can try to reflect on it or not. Sierra, back to Foothill, now at Woodcreek. If anyone wants to look up Coach Hibbs' record, go ahead. It's absurd. But knowing that, and coming back into this at a new school, what did you realize right away that you needed to figure out, even though you had this thing kind of hacked and figured out for a long time? What hit you in the face and it was like, oh, yeah, I should probably figure this one out?
Well, I was scared to death, to be honest with you. I was terrified. One of the things, we did like a little going away party from Foothill, and it was, we had a name for it. I forget what it was. But a lot of people.
Hibbs is finally leaving. Was that the name? He's finally gone?
I said, yeah, maybe. They said, hey, you're going to have to finally teach up there. They're going to require that, I'm like, oh crap, I'm going to have to do some work, So that was scary. My first year here was not me. I feel like, and I had great kids, especially the seniors. You would think that the seniors, after having Coach Hayes, some of them I don't think they had Pinkerton, but he was around, who had a great, and our styles are very different. That the seniors would really rebel. It was the seniors that, again, bought in. I had a couple of them here last night at the game, and they really really didn't have reason to, me from anybody, and ironically, it was kind of the juniors that were the pains. But anyway, the seniors bought in, and but because I was not me, I was trying to make sure everybody liked me. I didn't want any problems. I had more parent meetings that first year here at Woodcreek than I had in all my years at Foothill combined. Now, as sometimes parent participation and parent influence is a blessing and a curse. At Foothill, we struggled to raise money, and there was hardly any parent involvement for many of those years. Not at the very beginning, but at the end. And when I get here, there's plenty of money, and parents want influence. And that's a so when I got here, I wanted everybody to like me, and okay, I had this reputation of being difficult, and no, I'm gonna be friends with everybody, and we had a really good year, but that wasn't me.
Yeah.
And I struggled with that, worrying about, are they going to rehire me? They can get rid of me now. I gotta get tenure all over again. A new district. I will say that this district is phenomenal in that they take all the years. So I had 27 years at transfer. It was funny that the staff, the PE staff, was like, "Oh, you're the rookie." I said, "Yeah, but I'm making more than all of you guys." So it's kind of, so I think that process of starting over again, changed me as well. Having to do things a little bit differently. I mean, I could pretty much do whatever I wanted at Foothill.
Yep.
Really had no checks. I mean, like I said, I in that situation, I told the principal, no, I'm coming back,
Yeah.
And I remember in meetings, because I was also helping, I wasn't really the athletic director, but I was kind of helping. And she said, well, we need to do this. I said, no, we're not going to do that. We're not doing that. We're going to do it this way. And she's like, oh, okay. Went with it. So and I'm not saying that but that's just the way it was. And I had that credibility. I'd been the long-term guy there,
Right.
Been there the longest.
Right.
So, here that's a different story. And there's an established process here that they're by the book here. They follow the rules, and will sometimes self-report if there's a problem. And so it was a change, and I had to find that groove,
Yep.
And now, probably after in the third year, which was the COVID year, I kind of found it. I felt like I had my guys now.
Yeah.
That understood what I wanted and were doing the things that I wanted to do. And now, you know, that's just, it's kind of, I feel like I'm back to me again. Finally. And even though it's a little different, you know, but I feel like, you know, it's not Coach Hayes' program.
Yeah.
Anymore. It's
right.
mine now.
Right. Let me ask on that.
Not to say anything, right? We have a great relationship. He's still here. He's got a couple more years.
Yep.
Retires. So that's all good.
Right.
And very supportive.
Yep. Well, yeah, and that's always helpful, right? Where you got Paul, who's got the background that he has and the success, and then you're coming in, and it's not this clash of egos. It's hey, how can I help you? I got the same from Christopoulos when I went to El Camino, and it was like they didn't have to do that, but that's, you know, you're treating people the way you hope they treat you, and ultimately there's that trickle down, which probably helped the buy-in of the kids because you know he's not out there poisoning the well. But what I want to come back to, because you said it wasn't easy, you changed some things. You're finally back to yourself. I would also venture to guess that some of those changes have stuck with you. Some of them have gone away. But what I really want to know is what's the best thing you do in your program that has come with you from Foothill, even if modified, but it's a through line of who you are and what you do, that should that school close tomorrow and you go coach somewhere else, just because what's coming with, because like, look, this is what makes us who we are.
Well, I kind of come back to whatever it was. And maybe, you know, Katz is writing a book, you know, I don't know. I guess if I knew what it was, I could sell it or whatever, but for whatever the reason, again, that first group, there's credibility, and I had it. I don't know how I had it, but I had it, and they bought it, you know, and it flowed. And I think we've gotten there now. I don't know if it's, you know, I've got a tattoo on my leg, you know, about the state championships, and whether they see that, I don't know. They know that, whatever. You know, there's a sense of credibility. So I like to think that when I was hired here, there was continued, again, with Hayes, continued credibility that, hey, you know, we're serious about our athletics here, and we're hiring a guy who's been there and done that thing. As far as the coaching part, what comes with me, I think is an intensity. I'm still a yeller. I'm not probably as much or as brutal as I was, because you can't get away with that anymore, and we couldn't get away with it here. And that was questions. One of the topics that came up. Hey, Drew, you're pretty hard on officials. You know, we don't do that here. You know, and I remember I got called into the assistant principal's office about, hey, you can't be getting teased and you can't be getting kicked out of games. You know, you can't do that. We don't do that here.
Yep.
So my T numbers have gone way down. You know? Yep. And it's a point of emphasis for me, because even my wife told me at times, you know, even back at Foothill, hey, what, you know, you look like you're out of control. I didn't feel like I was out of control, but you look like you're out of control on the sidelines sometimes. And, so I've tried to really tone that down. And not that I didn't do this then, but just try to, you know, when I'm talking to kids, you know, put my arm around them. This is what you did. This is what I want. Right. This is what you need to do. Right. And you know, getting on them, which I still do at times. And of course. Right. I've definitely mellowed out a little bit with age and experience, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit, if you can? Two reasons. Actually, two things. One, with the officials, and two, with the kids. As you have mellowed out relative to who you once were. Yeah. What is the impact that you have seen on, however you want to define success, be it wins and losses, be it relationships, be it, you know, how you stew at night based on conversations you've had? But I always laugh. Dustin Aubert was on a couple weeks ago, and he was talking about how Hey, if hollering at the refs made a difference, we'd spend 40 minutes a day on it in practice. We'd figure out the best technique, we'd figure out the best strategy, but it doesn't. So, like, I don't understand why people do that. So, what have you physically seen to yourself as you're now reflecting that you've intentionally tried to stop on the official side? Because I think that's a big deal for young coaches. Officials are leaving the profession.
Right.
We're not going to have them in a few years. And then also with the kids, where let's not say you've gotten soft, even though that's what all of our old players tell us.
Right.
You've shifted, you've grown, you've matured. How have you seen the impact in both the student space, the coaching relationship space, and the official space?
As far as the players, I it's funny that I have, like I said last night, this couple of the first year guys came back and said, "Oh, you're getting soft." I'm like, you guys don't even know me from before. Oh, you don't even know. So, but even the older guys, from the Foothill days that come back, and like I said, I've got a Michael Kirby who played for me. Coach, you would have never let us get away with that. I can't believe you're letting those guys get away with that. But it's different. The kids are different. To be honest, I think a lot of the kids now couldn't handle. They'd go, "Nah, forget it, I'm out," or whatever. They couldn't handle what I'd done in the past. And so I think along those lines, I want guys that we want guys that want to be coached and are okay with taking a little bit of the heat. But understanding that, hey, I care about him, and I'm also gonna give him positives at the right time too. I tell them straight up, look, I'm not here to tell you what you're doing right. Sometimes, I'm here to correct what you're doing wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You don't always get a pat in the back for doing what you're supposed to do.
Right.
There are those moments when that's important. I had a guy yesterday in practice who's pouting. He's a sophomore. He's a good player, but he's pouting a little bit, and he's getting time on. He's coming off the bench. He's getting quality, important time for us. And he just was having he had a couple of really bad practices, and so I was ripping him pretty good. And then I pulled him aside, and then he got back in at practice, and he made a hard cut like he's supposed to. And it drew the defense, which opened up somebody else, right? So I blew the whistle. I said, "Look, you made that play because you went hard." Okay. So here I was trying to stroke him a little bit and say, "Look, this is why. It's not about you.
Mm-hmm.
What's best for the team.
Mm-hmm.
If you make that hard cut and you're open, we're going to try to get you the ball. If you make that hard cut and two guys go with you, somebody else is open, and it's a good thing as well."
Yep.
So trying to get them to understand that's just that I went on and said, "You made that play, and that play will never show up in the stats, but I know it, and your team knows it."
Yep.
That's all that matters.
Yep.
I'm not a stats guy. I'm not a stats guy. I'm not a film guy. I hate watching film. I hate it.
Yes, I remember that because I asked you for film. You said we didn't.
I always say that. I get that all the time. I get, "Hey, will you trade films?" I say, "We didn't film that game. We may have. I don't even know. Somebody did. I'm sure." Or we've got that NFHS camera.
Yep.
I have not watched film one time this year, except for little clips on other teams, not our own.
Yep.
I don't like it. I know there's a purpose to it, but I can't stand it. I figured I saw it the first time. I don't need to see it again. I don't need to see it. I know what you did wrong, and I'm going to tell you, and you got to believe me. We'll watch it at some point. Well, I usually watch at least once a year. We'll watch about 15, 20 minutes, but I only get through the first 2 minutes of the game. I'm just picking up
because you're not here to tell them what they did right. You're here to tell them what they did wrong.
Yeah. Yep.
I love it.
So it takes forever to try to go through a film.
Oh, absolutely. I'm on the same page. It's so hard. Go back to the referee piece now.
Yeah.
What have you learned with your shift in approach?
Well, again, you're right. It doesn't change anything. I think I'm trying to make them more aware. I think one guy said, "Coach, just, it was Southern California, and they're different than Northern California. There was a very different vibe." He said, "Coach, just coach your team. coach your team, coach your team. I said, I'm coaching my team, but it's hard when I have to try to coach you too, because that's not the rule. You're changing the rules. And one of my lines is, are there any other rules that you're gonna, not call, so I can tell my players that you're not calling that? I hate the catch and hop.
Yeah.
It drives me insane.
Oh.
I tell this, we probably spend too much time on it, but it's my pet peeve.
Yep.
Balance and footwork. We do not travel, and we pay for traveling violations. We run.
Yep.
We're gonna jump stop. We are use the correct pivot foot. I'm a firm believer in the permanent pivot foot.
Yep.
At the higher levels, obviously, you can change that, but some are able to do it, some are not.
Yep.
So, but again, with the officials, you just have to kind of go like this and go, okay, that's the way it goes. We had our big guy the other night, our freshman 6'7" big guy, who's having a great year and really coming along. He gets in foul trouble early, and it looks to me like he's blocking shots.
Yeah.
He's moving his body. He's standing up. His hands are up. He's tipping balls here and there. He's getting called for fouls. It's like, what is he doing right? He can move.
Yep.
I'm telling the official, he can move. He doesn't have to stand there, and he can jump. He's not running into guys. Guys are running into him. Who's making the contact? Who's creating the contact? Oh, you're a guy. What? Okay, so it's like, okay, all right. At some point, I think what you have to recognize is you say your piece. You got to move on, and that's been a problem for me.
Yep.
In the past. You got to move on, and when you take it beyond that, then it's on you as coach. It's and you're going to have to accept the responsibilities. I also understand that because of a lot of the new guys, and the old veteran officials who used to be able to, come on, Drew, hey, okay, all right, I got you. I hear what you're saying. That's enough. Tired of it now. Those guys are gone.
Yep.
Now it's just boop.
Yep.
You say something, it's like a T right away.
Yep.
And I don't know if that's to put a notch on their whistle or I don't know. I don't know what it is, but they don't want to talk, and a lot of times they don't want to listen. I had a guy last night that did, and I was questioning something, and he said, okay, all right. I'll look for it, or I didn't see that.
Mm-hmm.
And then okay, all right. And then if I take it from there, then that's on me.
Yeah, for sure.
I get what I get.
For sure. Well, it's funny to listen to it because I think one of my players asked me the other day, we were down in Palm Springs at the tournament. He's like, Coach, when did you develop the tool to just not worry about these things? And I said, I can tell you the exact moment. I said, go back. I was trying to find a JV coach at El Camino. I had Jimmy Carroll. He had just got back from Utah. We talked. He was still living up in Placer, in Auburn. But one of the things he said, I said, what's the best thing you learned from Rick Majerus? And he said, don't spend a second of your life worrying about things you can't control. And I was like, and then it was just control the controllables. And so with officials, it's like, I'm the guy that just, hey, that's a great call. Like, let's keep going. Not just let the other coach like punch himself out. Yeah. And then at the end of the day, hey, why do you always get these calls? Because I don't talk to them other than tell them how great they are and how appreciative I am that they're there. And if I do ask something, it's the, hey, what did you see there? Oh, all right, cool. And then the kids complain. It's like, hey, life's not fair. Like, just get used to it. And so I think it's important, as you mentioned, right? How far do you want to take that?
Right.
Knowing at the end of the day, that's energy that can be spent elsewhere, right? Yeah. Coaching your kids, because the officials, one, I invite anybody that's a coach to go out and ref some games and see how hard it is, how flawed you're going to be. And then any official that's willing to even have a conversation, like, they deserve the utmost respect, because at the end of the day, they're going to tell you, hey, I missed that one. No problem. Try to get the next one. Well,
but I wish more officials would say that. I know that when I do summer stuff, right? It's not real games.
Yeah.
Right? A lot of summer stuff, doing our own tournaments or whatever. Heck, I filled in our JV tournament when one guy didn't show.
Yep.
And the guy goes, "No, I can do it myself." I said, "No, really, I've got some experience." He didn't know I was even the coach.
Yeah.
I'll help you out. So I'm coming out and I'm doing all the, the hand, this way. And he's like, "Oh, you've done this before?" Yeah, a little bit.
Yep.
And no, you're right. I'm not to your point yet to where you're at, but I'm a lot better than I was. And and I wish more officials would say, "Yeah, coach, I didn't get a good look at that." Or I told a veteran official who I know I won't say his name.
Yep.
This was when I was even at Sierra, and he was doing JC games and he was doing high school games. I said, just once, I'd like to hear you say, "I may have missed that one." Yeah, I may have missed that one. Not that you did miss it, just that it's a possibility that you might have missed it.
Right.
Just once. And I've had him probably times, right?
Yep.
And he says, "Nope, never going to say that." It's like, well, you know what? You really should. You really should say that. Just to show that you're human. And it's like, hey, okay. Because again, once an official says that, God, coach, I didn't get a good look. I wasn't sure. I had a bad angle. All right, well, then you go, okay, I'll try to get a better angle, and then or whatever, and then you have to leave it alone at that point. Yeah. Because they're showing they're human, and you got to go, well, okay, it's on me if I take it further.
Yeah. Well, let's put that in coaching perspective here. When's the last time, and this puts you on the spot, that in front of your class, in front of your family, in front of your team, where you were just like, hey, you know what? I messed that one up. I'm sorry. That's on me. What can I do to make it better?
Yeah, you got to step up. You do all the time. I do it all the time, especially at home. With my bad. I did it. I messed up.
Right.
So all the time. Yeah.
But the power of that as a leader, and we did this the other day. We pissed a game away, and we're looking at the film really briefly to try to get ready. And in the huddle while we were calling, we had like 3 seconds, maybe less. How much time do we have? Oh, we still have like 30 seconds left. And timeout's our last timeout. And I'm talking with Tyler, who played for me at El Camino. And he's, kind of taking a much bigger role. And it's like, what do we want here? And he's like, hey, let's run this. I'm like, I don't like that play. He's like, no, I think we get us. All right, cool, man. Go draw it up. Do what you want to do. And then we end up, not getting a shot and whatever. And it's fine. And then we're watching the film the next day. And he's like, God, that was a bad call. And I'm like, yep, I told you in that moment. Mm-hmm. And so we go into the locker room and we're talking about the film, and he's like, hey guys, this is a terrible play call. We didn't set you up for success, And so it's like, what's the power to that point of you talking with your team from a leadership standpoint? What are they able to take away from that you hope you're doing from a modeling standpoint that will go with them into life?
Well, first of all, just the whole life thing. We talk about that all the time. This is our chalkboard, whiteboard, whatever you want to call it. This is our canvas. Let's call it that. And this is not necessarily about basketball. This is about life. And I talk about history. I incorporate so many things. Try to make it a life lesson, not a basketball lesson necessarily. It relates totally, and I want them to get that. I know I'll start on some historical thing, the Chinese Revolution or something, and guys are going, what the heck? But then you bring it back, and say, this is why this is important. And so that's big. And I think, again, showing that you're human, and it's like, hey man, that was a bad call. I go back to a Colfax game in league at Foothill years and years ago, and we had struggled with this out of bounds play at a crucial time. We struggled with this out of bounds play. We didn't run it right. It was a good out of bounds play, but we just couldn't seem to run it right. And at a crucial time, I'm yelling out the call, and I call it. And I'm like, as soon as I did it, I'm like, what the hell am I doing? We don't even run that play right. Sure enough, it was a bust. We turned it over, and it probably, it didn't cost us the game, but it sure didn't help.
Right.
And it was like, guys, that was a horrible call on my part. And, and I don't think I still have that play. Joe kept saying, are we ever going to bring that play back? I'm like, nope, I'm never running that play again. We couldn't get it right. He said, 15 years ago. Well.
Yep. No, I think it's super important that we model that. And I think every day the kids are looking to us for how to behave. And when we throw one of our tantrums for whatever reason, we're having a bad day, how do we circle back and and tell them. You know, I did it the other day. It was like, hey guys, I'm sorry. That was out of character. I lost my cool. That's not what you need from me.
Right.
And keep it moving. All right, last question.
Yeah.
This doesn't have to be about basketball. It can be if you want. It can be about teaching, whatever. But I always ask a question that's a growth mindset question. That's, what have you most recently changed your mind on? So as you navigate the world, maybe it is coaching, but it's like, hey, I used to be over here and pretty dug in, and now I'm over here, and here's why.
Well, I would have to say, keeping it with basketball. I would just have to say, you know, my overall, you know, we talked about it, kind of my overall, I don't know if I want to say behavior. I think there was I've had guys that, for example, Ken Green at St. Mary's.
Yep.
And he has an assistant, or had an assistant, Steve, who was a friend of a friend, and he and I became friends. But Ken Green hated me, and we didn't even know each other, right? Hated me because of what, I guess, how I was, how I acted. I don't really know why, but he had this perception. And then we played a couple times, and we had beaten them a couple. So he really hated me then. In the playoffs, they were a 15 seed, and there was no reason they should have been a 15 seed.
Right.
Maybe 2004.
Yep.
And they're like, the one team I don't want to play is them. And we're the 2, they're the 15. It's like, oh my gosh. So we're down 7 with 30 seconds left and pull it out. Pull out the win. And he just, he didn't want to talk to me, didn't want to shake hands. He was so pissed, hated me. So the assistant coach said, hey, you and Drew ought to go out and have a beer sometime or something, go, just because he's not a bad guy. He's just super intense,
right?
Pisses people off, but he's not a bad guy,
Right.
So Ken and I, actually, we did that, and actually we've become pretty good friends.
Yeah.
So I think that there may be a perception, or there had been a perception about me that really isn't maybe the true me, outside of basketball. And I've tried to change that. Again, kind of with the showing of the intensity, the showing of the I don't know, behaviors.
Yep.
To lessen those, and I think it's just I think when I had kids, that changed things for me. And then coming here, that changed things for me. Again, I'm not saying I'm not intense, and I'm fiery, but it's certainly not to the level. And I think it's okay. It's okay. It's okay because a lot of the kids couldn't handle that, and I didn't need to do that. Yeah. I'm not regretting anything. Well, I do have some regrets, yes, but the success has been great, and all those connections that have been made. When a kid from '94 says, "Coach, you threw the garbage can at me," it's like, well, it wasn't at you. It was you just happened to be over there, in the locker room, or whatever. We laugh about it. I'm glad I still have reunions with the state championship teams. Years we meet, and I said, hey, as long as and when I'm gone, I hope you guys still will do that. Meet and get together. We shared something.
Yeah.
Very special.
Correct. Absolutely. That's funny. Yeah. I'm trying not to punt balls and break lights anymore. Yeah. All those types of things, where, all it takes is that one hitting somebody accidentally, and it's no bueno. So I love that.
I mean, on that 2003 team, I had a guy that would just mumble and just say stuff, and he had the ball in his hand, and we kind of huddled a little bit, and I said, give me the ball. And I grabbed the ball and I went, whoom, and just nailed him. And not like in the hip, not in the head or anything. And I, a couple expletives, don't talk when I'm talking, Yeah, I would never do that now. Yeah. I would never do that here. Number one, I would never want to do that.
Right.
Now I have taken a ball and kind of rolled it at somebody. Hey, knock it off, But I nailed him. I nailed him good. And he was like, whoa. And everybody was like, whoa. What's going on? I would never do that now.
Love it. Oh,
I think they knew. I think ultimately, they knew where I was coming from.
Yeah.
It wasn't. I didn't hurt anybody.
Well, and that's the key.
I don't know.
Well, Eddie made a comment early on. He was one of the first like 10 guys as well. And he's like, we ought to just get on this and just start telling stories. And I was like, don't get fired, man. Like, we're not doing that.
Right. Right.
Glad that we've all matured a little bit, Coach. Thanks for taking the time. I hope you have a great practice today. It's been fun. Keep me posted on how things are going.
Appreciate it, buddy. Thank you very much.